Good evening, all of you. I hope you all are doing well. And today, in this session, we are going to study the World History Part 3. World History Part 1 and Part 2. For your quick revision, in Part 1, we have completed the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution of the London. In the Part 2, we have completed the French Revolution and the American Revolution. And in the Part 3 of the World History, we are going to study today is the German unification and the Italian unification. Okay, so these two topics we're going to study under the part 3 of the world history. So let's start the session. So first topic is unification of Germany. Okay, so how the Germany got unified. So before getting into the concept, so this is the world map where we can look at Germany. Okay, so here it is Germany. So under the seaside of the Germany, there is Poland, Austria, Switzerland, France. Here United Kingdom is there. Okay, so Netherlands is there, and about northern side Denmark is there. Okay, so Northern Sea, Baltic Sea, Sweden. Okay, so there is the location of Germany in the world map. Okay, so here is the Germany. So this is the present day Germany, but before the unification, the condition of the Germany was different. Okay, it was not like that. So before getting into the unification, first we need to understand the social and economic conditions of the Germany before the unification. The social conditions were very much similar to the those witnessed in any feudal society, like we have discussed in the previous class. Feudalistic society was existed in the Europe. Okay, so not only in the London, many part of the Europe, the feudalistic society was there. So what is feudalistic society? Feudal lords were there. Okay, so under the feudal lords, peasants were working, and these feudal lords, they were very corrupt and they were exploiting the peasants. Such kind of feudalistic society was there in Germany also. And the landlords were called as the junkers. Yes, the landlords. These people were acting the peasants a lot. Okay, so and they are dominated the affairs of the state. Okay, so political affairs, economical affairs, it was all dominated by the landlords only in the Germany. Okay, these landlords are nothing but junkers. So this is one of the social condition. When it comes to the economic condition of the Germany, it was very much poor. Okay, so Germany had the very much poor economic conditions. Why so? Because Germany got divided into the multiple states. Okay, so in fact, Germany got divided into the 314 different states were there before the unification. You can compare this with the India's situation. After independence, there were 514 princely states were existed in the India. Okay, so after the independence, later that got united into the India. So similarly, in German also 314, okay, 314 different fragmented small states were existed, and these states, they did not had unity together. Okay, so they were fighting with each other constantly. They had rivalry with each other. Okay, so that created the poor economic development over the Germany, and as well as this poor economic development happened because of the restrictions of these states brought on the free movement of the goods. For example, if free movements of the goods are not there in the any country, then economic development will not grow. Okay, so for the growth of economic development, we need to set the free movement of the goods from one country to another country. Import and export must be there. Okay, such kind of situation was not existed in the Germany. So that's why it was facing a lot of poor economic condition, and as well as the backward socio-political system also contributed to the poor economic situation of the Germany. Okay, so now we understood what was the social condition of Germany. Society was the different classes. Feudalistic society was there. Feudal lords, they were exploiting peasants. That is one thing. And second thing is economically weak. Okay, of the multi-regions, and main reason is it was divided into the 340 small fragmented multiple states, and these states, they did not have unity together, and they were fighting because of the condition of Germany was very much bad. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. So next we move on to the role of Napoleonic and French Revolution, okay, on the German society. Okay, so this is the picture of the Germany before the unification. So in the previous slide, we have seen the Germany picture, right? The same picture is there, but it is the unification of the Germany. Small different states were there. Small fragmented different states were there. You can see the picture here. Saxon is there. Bavaria is there. Okay, so Berlin is there. Ma'am made me the host. Wars and French Revolution on the German society. So before getting into that, you need to now some brief background about the Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, Napoleon Bonaparte, he usually referred as the Napoleon. Okay, he was a French military and political leader who rose prominently during the French Revolution, and he led several successful campaigns during the Revolutionary Wars. Okay, he was a very great emperor. In fact, he is the first emperor of the France after the French Revolution. He contributed a lot for the French Revolution. Okay, he was a very strong emperor. Okay, Napoleon, and his wars, that is Napoleonic Wars, influenced the Germany. French it influenced Germany a lot. In 18th century, it was divided into the many states. I told you that is 314 states. The Napoleonic Wars ended the artificial boundaries of the many states and united them and with the 38 states. Okay, so previously I told you there were 314 states in the Germany. After the war with the Napoleon, okay, so after the Napoleonic War, he compressed them toward the 38 states. Okay, so from 314 to 38 states are there in the Germany right now. See, after the French Revolution, even the German people started demanding the democracy because the French Revolution that happened. Okay, so after the French Revolution, these new ideology, new concept, that is liberty, freedom, independence, democracy, those things influence the German people also. That's why German people started demanding the democracy from the government and economic reforms from the monarchs. Okay, the wave of nationalism enthused the German for unification of these states. Okay, so I told you Napoleonic War, directly or indirectly, they helped the unification of Germany. So in fact, the Napoleonic Wars were the keystones for the unification of Germany. Why so? Because I told you 314 states were existed before the Napoleonic War on Germany. But after the Napoleonic War, what he did, he comprised them with the 38 states. Okay, from 314 states, so it became 38 states now. And it is very much easy to unite 38 states compared to the 314 states. So that's why Napoleonic Wars were the keystones for the unification of Germany. And second thing is French Revolution ideologies. Okay, so those ideologies, that is liberty, democracy, independence, freedom. Okay, these things, influence the German people. They started asking for the government that they want economic reforms, that they want the democracy. Okay, and also along with that, the wave of nationalism, it enthused the Germans for the unification of the German states. And all these undercurrents resulted in the formation of one important organization, that is German Confederation. Okay, so German Confederation, it formed in the 1815, okay, with the Napoleon's help. So the German Confederation formed in the 1815. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. So next is failure to unite under the democracy. Okay, how it got failed to unite under the democracy. So before going into that, we need to understand the 1848. In 1848, what happened? So this 1848 year is very important in the history of Europe. Okay, so 1848 was a year of revolts in the most of the Europe for establishment of the democracy. Okay, because they got ideologies from the American Revolution, they got ideologies from the French Revolution. Now people are little enlightened. Okay, the people are little enlightened. They're asking for the democracy. Okay, they're asking for the self-rule. They're asking for the economic reforms. Okay, they're asking for different new innovations in the society. So because of that, 1848 year was very important. In this year, most of the revolts happened all among the all over the Europe for the establishment of the democracy. Okay, and these revolts were led by the workers, mainly workers, because those people were the one who got exploited by the feudal lords. Okay, so that's why these revolts happened by the workers. Okay, in 1848, revolt started in all German state also. Okay, not only in Europe, it got started in the German state also, for the overthrow of the present political system of monarchy rule, and the rulers were forced to grant a democratic form of government. Okay, and they also formed the Constituent Assembly. Okay, so remember that they also formed the Constituent Assembly. In the during the French Revolution, what happened? That tennis court oath they took, right? The third estate people, they went to the tennis court. There they took the oath of tennis court and they started the constitution writing procedure there. So similarly here, the people, they asked for the democracy for the government. They started making the Constituent Assembly. Okay, it formed the Constitution Assembly and it met in the Frankfurt. Okay, this is the area. Here they met, Frankfurt. What is the goal of this Constitution Assembly? The goal is to unite all the German states and draft the new constitution for the people. Okay, so that was the uh, okay, so that is the main goal of the Constitution Assembly. But later, what happened? The Prussian king, he refused to the proposal of the constitution monarchy for the United Germany, because kings always uh, oppose the democracy. So that's why they refused to the proposal of the constitution monarchy for the United Germany. And in the meantime, what happened? The rulers bounced back and they started the repression of the nationalists. Okay, these nationalists are the people, they started the Constitution Assembly and they started making the constitution for the United German. But because of these kings, these monarch rulers, the repression happened for the nationalists. And consequently, what happened? The rights which were granted for the appease the nationalists, they were withdrawn. All the rights which are given to the nationalists, they were withdrawn, and the monarchy of Prussia emerged the strongest. Here, one thing you need to understand, I told you 314 states were there before Napoleonic War. After Napoleonic War, 38 states were there. So among the 38 states, the Prussia and the Austria, okay, these two were the very prominent states of Germany. Remember the name, Prussia and Austria. Okay, so these were the very two prominent states, and they had lot of different ideologies, and they were the basically enemies. Okay, they did not have the unification. They were the enemies, Prussia and Austria. Okay, so through this, the Prussian rural became the strongest. Monarch government was there; he was very strongest. So next come the unification under the Bismarck and policy of blood and iron. It is very important. Okay, so am I audible to you guys? Am I audible? Am I audible? Anybody let me know in the comment. Okay. Okay. This is very important. So till now we have studied people failed through the democracy. They did not unify the German. So but now come the famous personality. His name is Bismarck. You can see in the picture. He is the Bismarck. His policy is named as blood and iron policy. Okay, the unification of Germany was still to happen, but not under the democratic government, which was formed by the nationalists, but under the iron hand of the Bismarck. He was the military commander of the Prussia. I told you, right? Prussia and Austria, these were the two important and strong states of the German. This Bismarck was the military commander of the Prussia. Okay, and he masterminded the unification of Germany in 1871, and he served as its first chancellor until the 1890. So this is some brief facts about the Bismarck you need to keep in mind. Okay, so he was the mastermind behind the unification of Germany in 1871, and he served as its first chancellor until the 1890, in which capacity he dominated the European affairs for the continuously 2 decades. He was a very famous personality, and he had served as the chancellor of North German Confederation from 1867 to 1871, and alongside the office of Chancellor of Germany. Okay, so he also served as Chancellor of North German Confederation. And he was Prussia's Minister President and the Minister of Foreign Affairs from 1862 to 1890. And before his rise to the executive power, Bismarck was the Prussian ambassador to the France and Russia and served in the both houses of the Prussian parliament. Okay, so these are the some brief factors about the Bismarck you need to know. Okay, so here he has been described as the greatest man the age produced because he was a very diplomatic person. He was a very important personality behind the German unification. So his history is basically divided into the 2 periods. Okay, so the first period is marked as from 1862 to 1871. Okay, if you don't know, please note it down. Okay, from 1862 to 1871, it is the first period of the Bismarck. So in this first period, his aim was to unite the Germany. Okay, so his aim, what was his aim? His aim was to unite the Germany under the leadership of Prussia. That was his aim because he was the military commander of the Prussia. Okay, and next comes the second period because in 1871, what happened? German unification happens. We're going to discuss how the German unification happened. So before that, to know about the Bismarck, you need to know 2 phases of his life. Okay, so first phase is from 1862 to 1871. So this first phase, very crucial phase because his main aim was to unify the Germany under the leadership of Prussia. Okay, why Prussia? Because he was military commander of Prussia. And second phase comes from 1871 to 1890. Okay, so 1871 to 1890. So here his main aim was to maintain the position owned by the Germany. That is to whatever the dignity has written has gained by the Germany, to keep that dignity. So that was his main aim. Okay, so to maintain the dignity of the German in the Europe. That was his main aim after the 1871 to 1890. Okay, so these are the 2 different phases of the Bismarck life. So next thing you need to know about Bismarck is Bismarck, he did not believe in the democracy. Okay, so he did not believe in the democracy or any democratic procedure. What he told was, if you just sitting in the parliament and making the petition to the government or asking the monarchs for the different rights, then it is not going to happen. Okay, so what you need to do, you need to do the blood and iron policy. Okay, so after that only German unification is possible. So that was his main goal. So he did not believe in the democracy and he did not even believe in the any democratic procedures. Okay, so that is the Bismarck ideology. I hope this is clear to you about the Bismarck. So next, to implement that, he had to have some help. Okay, am I audible now? Am I audible? I think now I am audible. Yes? Okay. See, I told you blood and iron policy is famous policy of the Bismarck. And to implement his policy of blood and iron, he basically had to fight for 3 wars. Okay, because Bismarck was a very intelligent person, he was very diplomatic person, and he clearly knew that Prussia alone can never unite the Germany. Okay, so he clearly knew that. So that, and he had lot of obstacles before him. He had lot of obstacles in front of him. One obstacle is Austria, because I previously told you Prussia and Austria, they were the enemies. Okay. Second obstacle is Denmark. Okay, you can see in the map. Okay, here Denmark is there. For the unification of Germany, Denmark was a basically threat. Austria was also one of the threat. And third threat is the France. Okay, France was also there. So these were the 3 main obstacles he has to face before the unification of the Germany. Okay, so because of that, he was very diplomatic and he clearly used the diplomatic relations and he fought the 3 wars. Okay, against all 3 obstacles. The first war is with the Denmark. Okay, so remember, first war with the Denmark. It happened in 1864. Okay, so Bismarck, Prussia first fought a war in 1864 in alliance with the Austria against the Denmark to annex the most of the territories of the German Confederation. So here you can see the diplomatic mind of the Bismarck. Here what he has done is, see, first he told to the Austria that we can combine together and we can make war on the Denmark. Because see, Austria and Prussia, I told you, they were the enemies. But in this war, they are coming together. That is the logic here. Okay, so clearly, keep in the mind, Austria and Prussia, they were the enemies. But in this war, they were combining together and they were making war on which country? They are making war on the Denmark. Okay, so this is the diplomatic mind of the Bismarck, how he united the Germany. Okay, so here what he told to the Austria, okay, let's make compromise with each other. So we will make an agreement. Okay, we will make a war on the Denmark. Okay, so then we can share the territory what we have won from the Denmark. Okay, so that was the agreement that happened between the Austria and Prussia. That Prussia is nothing but headed by the Bismarck. So because of that, in 1864, what happened? The alliance of Austria and Prussia, they made the war on the Denmark. Okay, I hope you are understanding what I'm telling. They made the war on the Denmark and they, captured these 2 areas. You can see in the picture, Slesvig and Holstein. Okay, you can see in the picture, this Slesvig and Holstein. So these 2 areas they captured. Okay, and along with that, lot of the territory of German Confederation they annexed. According to the treaty that happened between the Austria and Prussia, this Schleswig, it belongs to the Austria and this Holstein belongs to the Prussia. Okay, according to the agreement. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. In 1864 war with the Denmark, Prussia got won. Prussia got the victory. Okay, and they also got lot of the territory of the Germany. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. So next what happened? Then he allied with the Italy in 1866 to defeat the Austria. Okay, so this war is called as Austro-Prussian War of 1866. Okay, so the what happened in the next war? He aligned with the Italy, not only with the Italy, he aligned with the France, he aligned with the Russia, he aligned with the Italy. Okay, and he again fought the war against Austria only and removed it from the German Confederation. German formed in 1890, but now this German Confederation got ended. Okay, so why it got ended? Because of this 1866 war. See, clearly you should understand here, in 1864, he combined with the Austria and he defeated the Denmark. In the second war, in 1866, what he is doing? Bismarck is doing war against the Austria only. Okay, he defeated the Austria in the 1866 war. And he removed the Austria from the German Confederation, and consequently the whole confederation itself got ended. Okay, so this is the second war. This is called as the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. Okay, next comes the Franco-Prussian War. Before that, in 1867, what happened? Bismarck formed the North German Confederation. Okay, because he already defeated the Austria, one obstacle gone. First obstacle he already, destroyed, that is Denmark. In the second war, Austria also gone. Now he has only one enemy, that is France. So before that, he created the North German Confederation. So in this North German Confederation, he united the 22 German states. Okay, and he excluded the southern German states like Bavaria, okay, which remained independent. And the constitution of this confederation made the Prussian king the hereditary head of the state. And next, the southern states followed the pro-Austria policy but were forced to unite after the German victory in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. So these three wars are very important. So first war we already studied in 1864. Second war is in the 1866. Third war it is going to happen in 1870. We will discuss it later. But before that, you need to understand, after the defeat of the Austria, he formed the Northern German Confederation in 1867. So in this Northern German Confederation, 22 German states got united, but some states were not there in the this confederation, that is mainly the southern Germany. Okay, like states like Bavaria, they were not the part of the North German Confederation. So next comes the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. Okay, see the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. It led to the final unification of the Germany, and it also ended the monarchy. Okay, so this monarchy was staggering, and the condition were ripe for the another revolution for republic. Okay, so we are talking about the 1870 situation. At that time, the French king Louis Bonaparte was there. Okay, so French king Louis Bonaparte was there in France, and he declared war on the Germany in 1870. He wanted to use this war victory to divert the attention of the public, because the public, lot of rivalry was happening against the king. Okay, so what kind of rivalry? Because they were asking the republic state, they were asking the people's right, they were asking the democracy. To divert the people attention, this king Louis Bonaparte, French king Louis Bonaparte, he declared the war on Germany in 1870. Okay, so what was his plan? He wanted to use this war victory to divert the attention of the people, and to use the consequent war gains to lend the credibility to his reign. Okay, and other hand, this side, in Germany side, Bismarck was there, right? On other hand, Bismarck was also partially responsible for the provoking the French for the war, and the result was that French was defeated, and it declared itself republic in 1871. The war and the consequent German victory allowed the Bismarck to absorb the rest of the German state into the United Germany. So here, the Louis Bonaparte, he had different plan only, but it got collapsed because of the Bismarck. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. See what happened in the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. The French people were making rivalry against the king. Okay, they wanted the democracy, they wanted republic states, so that's why they were creating the rivalry. To distract the attention of the public, the Louis Bonaparte, King Louis Bonaparte, he declared war on the Germany in 1870. In the Bismarck, another side, Bismarck also waiting for the same, because he already defeated his two enemies. So one is Austria gone, okay, another one is Denmark gone. In the first war in 1864, he defeated the Denmark, and in next 1866 war, he defeated the Austria. He left with only one enemy, that is France. Okay, so that's why he was waiting for that situation. He used that situation very well, and he defeated the French people. Okay, so he defeated the French people. So what is the result of this war? The French got defeated, and it declared itself the Republican state in the 1871, and the war got ended, and German unification happened in 1871. That is in the next year. Okay, in 1871, German unification happened. So I hope this is clear to you. These are the three different wars and very important wars of the German unification and the Bismarck. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. So next comes the unification of the Italy. Okay, so now we're going to study the unification of Italy. So unification of Italy was a two-step procedure. See, socio-economic condition of Italy was also the same, like many other European countries. Feudalistic society was there. Economic condition of the people was very much bad, and these feudal laws, they were taking people like a dogs. Okay, they were treating them like the slaves. So that's why the unification of Italy was also very much needed. So when it comes to the unification of Italy, it was very simple and it has only two-step process in that. So in the first step, what they had to follow, it had to gain the independence from the Austria, because Italy was under the Austrian rule. Okay, so first to unify the Italy, it had to gain the independence from the Austria. And second thing, it had to unite the consequent independent Italian states into the single unit. Because in Italy also, there were different independent states were there, just like the Germany. I told you, right? 314 different states were there. In Italy, also small, fragmented different states were there. Okay, so second procedure is it had to unite the consequent independent Italian states into a single unit. So these were the two-step process followed in the unification of the Italy. So here comes the famous personalities, Mazzini and Garibaldi. Very, very important. Don't forget their name, Mazzini and Garibaldi. See, in each and every revolution, in each and every unification, there were some people. Okay, in German unification, Bismarck is very important. I told you his main policy is blood and iron, and he did not believe in the democracy and even in the democratic procedure. So when it comes to the unification of Italy, Mazzini and Garibaldi, another one person will come. Next slide, I will tell you, and that person is, these three people were very important. Okay, so very important. Remember, Mazzini and Garibaldi, they were the revolutionaries who played an important role in the process of unification of Italy. In this Mazzini, he had formed the organization. So this organization name is Young Italy. Okay, so this Young Italy came into the force in 1831. Okay, so remember who formed the Young Italy? Mazzini. So who are these people? Mazzini and Garibaldi. They were the revolutionaries in the Italy, and the Mazzini formed the Young Italy. So Young Italy consisted of lot of the nationalistic people, and it consisted of lot of youth. Okay, so he formed the Young Italy in 1831 for unification of the Italy. From 1831 onwards, Young Italy repeatedly attempted the revolts against the monarchy. So monarchy is nothing but the rulers were there. Okay, monarchical rulers were there, king was there. They started repeatedly, revolting against the monarchical rulers. Okay, but all of them failed to establish the democratic and united Italy. Okay, so remember here, even though Young Italy tried a lot of the things, they have revolted a lot of the times against the monarchical rulers, they got failed because these monarchical rulers were very much strong. They defeated the Young Italy movement. They defeated the Young Italy revolt. Okay, so but Young Italy enthused the people for united the Italy under the liberal government. Okay, even though it got failed, but its effort did not fail because this is the one such organization which created the awareness among lot of the youths in the Italy. Like how in our Indian independence, lot of reformers, lot of literary work from different people, enthusiastic people towards nationalism. Same thing happened in the Italy also. Okay, this Young Italy people, even though it got failed under the monarchical rule, it was the basic stone, okay, to unite the people of the Italy, okay, and to create awareness among the Italian people. It did lot of work towards in that regard. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. Remember the Mazzini and Garibaldi, and who formed the Young Italy? Mazzini formed the Young Italy in 1831. It is one of the organizations. Okay, so next we're gonna understand the role of 1848 revolts. In the previous slides also I told you what is the 1848 revolt is all about. See, 1848 is a very important year in the European history because in that year lot of revolts were taken place. Okay, so these revolts were taken by the lot of intellectuals, workers, liberals, peasants. Okay, so these all people were against the reactionary Austrian control and wanted the liberal government. Okay, but it did not succeed that extent. Okay, it did not succeed, and it did not even consolidated the state of Italy, but at to this certain extent it united the people. Okay, so it helped in the creation of awareness among the people, just like in the Young Italy organization. Okay, so next comes the policy of Prime Minister Cavour. I told you the three people are very important in the Italy unification. One is Mazzini, Garibaldi, third one is this Cavour. He was the Prime Minister of the Italy at that moment of time. Okay, after the 1848 revolts, attempts at unification of Italy were made by the Prime Minister Clever of Italian state of Sardinia. You can see in the picture where this comes. Okay, in the next slide, I will show you where is this Sardinia and all. So remember, he was the Prime Minister of the Italy at that time. Okay, so Italy means unified Italy was not there. He was the Prime Minister of the Sardinia. It is one of the state in the Italy, and his policy was similar to that of the Bismarck, that is iron and blood policy. Okay, so his policy was very much similar to the Bismarck policy. In 1859, important event happened. In 1859, Sardinia allied with the France in a war against the Austria because Italy was under the Austrian control. But in 1859, what happened? This Sardinia, which was led by the Cavour at that moment of time, he allied with the France. Okay, he allied with the France, and they both together, they fought the war against the Austria, and which freed the many states of the Italy from Austrian rule, and most of them were united under the monarch of Sardinia. So that's why I told you, just like Bismarck is there in the German unification, Cavour is there in the Italian unification. Okay, so what he did, his policy is like, he is also similar like Bismarck policy. So that is iron and blood policy. So that's why he allied with the France, and he made war against the Austria in 1859. So because of that, Austria got defeated by the French and Sardinia people, and lot of the Italian state got independence from the Austrian rule. Okay, so now these independent states come under the monarch of Sardinia. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. So next comes the some exceptions were there in that war. So one is Venetia. Okay, you can see in the picture. So this was the map of the Italy before unification. You can see in this pink color, that is this is Venetia. So Venetia which still remained under the Austrian rule. After the war with the France and Austria, this Venetia, it was under the rule of Austria. So next, the kingdom of two Sicilies. So that is in the southern Italy, two Sicily kingdom was there. You can see in the picture, this side, purple color, Naples and Sicily. So this is usually called as the two Sicily kingdom, which was the collective name for the kingdom of Sicily and kingdom of Naples. It was also there. It was not unified under the Sardinia monarch. They were separate kingdoms. Kingdom was there. Okay, so Naples and the Sicily. These purple color, these are the Naples and Sicily. So next comes the papal state. Okay, so important papal state. These papal states with their capital in Rome, which were under the direct rule of the Pope. They neither belonged to the Sardinia monarch, they did not belong to the Austria. They were under the direct rule of the Pope. Okay, so these were the exemption after the 1859 war. Okay, so one thing is clear, this Venetia, it still remained under the Austrian rule even after the war. Okay, so Venetia, it's pink color. So next comes this Naples and Sicily, collectively called as Kingdom of Two Sicilies. It is in the southern Italy. They were also remained separately. They did not united under the Kingdom of Sardinia. So next is the papal state. Okay, so which was under this papal state in the Rome. So they are under the direct rule of the Pope. They did not belong to the either Austria or the Sardinia. Okay, so these were the three exemptions were there after the war. Sicily and Naples were liberated later on from the despotic rule of the Ferdinand II. Okay, and this fight was led by the Garibaldi and consequently brought under the Sardinia monarchy in 1860. Okay, I will show you in the picture. So these are the events. Some events are very much important from 1860. Okay, from 1860 events are very much important. See this Sicily and Naples. Just now I have shown you in the map in the previous slide. Okay, so these I hope, are you listening to me or not? Yes, right? Okay, Sicily and Naples, they were liberated from the despotic rule of the Ferdinand II by the revolutionary fighter, which was led by the Garibaldi, and consequently it brought under the Sardinia monarchy in 1860. Okay, this is very important event. And the Kingdom of Italy was established then on. Okay, in 1759, what happened? The war happened with the French and Austria. in that war only, lot of the Italian states united under the Sardinia monarchy. But in 1860, the fighters, revolutionary fighters, which was led by the Garibaldi, they defeated this Ferdinand II, and because of that, Sicily and Naples they liberated, and then they came under the Sardinia monarchy. So that happened on 1860. Next, Venice was annexed by the Italy in 1866 by taking advantage of the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. We have studied, right, Austro-Prussian War. It happened in 1866 because of the Bismarck. So in that war, these Italy people took the advantage. So because of that, they annexed the Venice. They united under the Sardinia monarchy. So now only Rome was left, because Sicily and Naples, they already took the control. Next, the Venice also, they already took the control. Now only Rome was left. Okay, the Pope had the protection of the French troop in the Rome. Okay, because in the exemption I told you, this papal state was under the direct control of the Pope. So the protector of this Pope was the French troops. Okay, so they were also weakened by the Franco-Prussian War that happened in 1870. Okay, so in the previous slide we have studied, right, in German unification, 1870 war happened between the Bismarck and the France people, and Bismarck defeated the French, right? So that's why in that war the French troops were weakened. French country itself got weakened. So that's why he did not receive any protection from the French. Okay, so that's why it is very easy for the Italy people to annex the Rome. So that's why Rome was annexed and made the capital of Italy, and thus completing the process of unification. After the unification, Italy and Germany started industrializing, and industrial revolution started in these states as well, because industrial revolution is a big phenomenon, I told you. Okay, so it started in Italy, it started in Germany also from the UK. So these are the very important events happened in the Italian unification. I tell you once again. Okay, so first thing is in 1759 war happened. Okay, a lot of the states come under the Italy. So next in 1860, important event happened, that is Garibaldi led fighters. They attacked the Ferdinand II and they captured the Sicily and Naples. Okay, so they liberated the Sicily and Naples. They come under the Sardinia monarchy. So that happened on 1860. So next in the 1866, because of the Austro-Prussian War, Venice was annexed. Okay, because they took the advantage of the 1866 war, they annexed the Venice. Which people? Italian people annexed the Venice. So now only Rome was left to unify the whole Italy, because in the Rome the Pope was there. It was under the direct control of the Pope. Okay, and this Pope was getting the constant protection from the French troop. So because of this Franco-Persian War in 1870, French troops were weakened. So this was a very good time for the Italy people to annex the Rome. So that's why they annexed the Rome also, and they made it as the capital of Italy. So after all this, it complete the process of unification of the Italy. So after the unification, what happened? Italy and Germany, they started the industrializing, and industrial revolution started in the Italy and the German also. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. So this map is for your understanding purpose. In different events are given. Okay, what all happened in the different year. This is for your understanding purpose. Okay. So this is the complete Italy after the unification. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. So in this topic, we learned the world history part 3. If you have any doubts regarding the topics we discussed, let me know in the comment section. Any doubts?